in this part of the world. I mean, Lebanon is such a small country. It's tiny, and it's full of so many different opinions and ideas and religions.
We have a varied student body from over 67 different countries.
Stop and start, reconstruction, war, reconstruction, war.
The boycott was a big feature, a Christian boycott was a big feature of the '92 parliamentary election.
We're in Beirut, Lebanon, on the International Reporting Project's annual Gatekeeper Editors Trip. This is part of our annual Gatekeepers visit. We've taken editors in the past to Indonesia, Brazil, South Africa, and we decided to come to Lebanon and Syria this year.
Beirut has 7 layers of different archaeology, and I'm sure Yasser did tell you about it.
We felt that it was important for U.S. editors, particularly today, particularly with the events of the world, to be able to experience the Arab world for themselves. For many of our editors, it's the first visit to an Arab country. For some, it's the first visit to the Middle East. And there's no better way to learn about the region than actually go and hear from Arabs themselves about issues that have been discussed in the U.S., issues that they're thinking about, and to be able to experience the diversity of opinion and diversity of views.
This is not the right way to have democracy. We cannot impose it. It's a democracy that we have to get gradually. We have to learn how to be democratic. We have to learn how to live democratic. Thank you.
I decided to come on this trip because I wanted to know more about the political thought process in the Middle East and what they really think of us on a personal basis. I wanted to be able to talk to people from Lebanon and other parts of the Arab world.
The most important aspect of Islam, that is the essence of Islam, what makes Islam different from other religion, this is from a Muslim's perspective, is their conception of what's called Tawheed.
One of the reasons we've come to Lebanon and Syria on this Gatekeeper Editors trip is because after 9/11, much of the American public and the American media have been trying to get a better understanding of the forces of Islam.
And I think this is what Muslims perceive themselves as distinguished from others, that they have very strict monotheism.
And we began our trip here with an introduction to the history and background of Islam by scholars and experts on that subject at the American University of Beirut.
The essence of God is beyond the human understanding.
A reporter who gets really involved in a story often doesn't see the whole picture. And I mean, that was true when I was a reporter, it's true for every reporter. And my job as an editor is to try to prompt them and tell them, well, look at this, look at that. Make sure you, and now I have much more knowledge to be able to point them in some direction.
In Israel, the situation is a bit different.
نحن نميز بين الشعب اليهودي يعني كدين وكيهود.
We have no problem with the Jewish people in religious terms, the people who were living there before as part of that state. However, the Israelis and the Zionists who came from outside the country, who emigrated there, this is what we don't accept.
One of the issues we wanted to explore in this trip was militant Islam. In Lebanon, there is a militant Islamic group called Hizbullah. So we thought the best way to learn about that group was actually to meet members of it and get a first-hand look at them and their views and how they act on the Lebanese political scene.
We also met with the Sheikh Ayatollah Fadlallah, who for many years was considered the spiritual advisor of Hizbullah. He's not as close to the group as he used to be, but he's still a very influential Shiite cleric.
When I study President Bush's mentality, I find it difficult to expect something good in this regard because he regards himself as the second coming of Christ. I don't believe he deals with things in an objective and rational fashion. He believes that God has sent him into this earth in order to rule.
We had a wide-ranging conversation with him about the war in Iraq, about sectarian groups in the Middle East and in Lebanon, and about U.S. policy.
The torture that we're seeing in the pictures in the media is the torture of individuals, but occupation is the torture of an entire people.
Ayatollah Fadlallah, on the other hand, we met with him after the Hizbullah people, and I found him to be interesting. His views seem to be
nuanced. He seemed in some ways to be a lot less radical than I'd expected. As I say, I think the problem with the American media is that the coverage does tend to be superficial. It does tend to be a body count. There's little understanding of the nuances that lie beneath what is happening, of the history behind it. And this is why a trip like this is so useful to us, because we can perhaps convey some of that history in a more authoritative tone now that we've spoken to the experts in the area.
It's about an hour and a half to the Lebanese-Syrian border. I think we'll stop shortly before that, before we arrive at the border, about halfway, at a place that Ron has recommended.
We're at the Masabki Dairy in Shatura, Lebanon, very close to the Syrian border. And the proprietor here is Atif Hajar, who is the first cousin of my very best friend in Toledo, Ohio. So it's really kind of delightful to be here today. You know, I think when you take a trip like this, part of what we want to learn about is the culture, and I think this was a first-hand lesson in the Lebanese culture.